Hey, welcome to Life in the Leadership Lane. I'm your host, Bruce Waller, where I get to talk to leaders that are making a difference in the workplace and in our communities. What did they do to get started? And what are they doing to stay there? And oh my goodness, we are rolling right through season 7, and I'm bringing you another special guest today. As today I'm getting to talk with Chris Wollerman. He's the Chief Executive Officer at Inspire Software. The organization, they're designed to help business leaders achieve organizational excellence and create winning cultures. And we're going to be talking about winning cultures today. Hey, Chris, how you doing, man? Good to have you on the show.
Doing great, Bruce. Very good to be here.
I always like to start the show just kind of reflecting on like when I've met my guests or just kind of when they came into my path. Some of those I hadn't met. We just recently met, and we met. My nephew, Darren Thornton. He sent me a text, and he's one of your employees, of course. And he sent me a text and said, "Hey, I really enjoyed this book. I'm going to refer this to our CEO." And he referred it to you, and you read the book, and you reached out and said you really enjoyed the book, which made me feel very grateful. But here's my question. I'm wondering, do you remember the moment whenever he forwarded you that book, and what was your thought like for one of your team members to forward a book? How did that make you feel?
I always appreciate that. I'm a big reader, and I think most of my employees know that. I usually read a book a week or so. And
Oh,
when Darren sent that over, I was excited to learn a little bit more. And I've known him since he was 5 years old, and
oh man.
now I believe he's 25 and an employee, and doing great as a software engineer.
Yeah, he's phenomenal. I enjoy our conversations. I heard somebody say one time they have a thirst for knowledge, and I just love being around people that want to grow in their leadership, and he's certainly one of those. Hey, before we get started, share a little bit about Inspire. For those who don't know your organization, talk a little bit about your organization and how you serve your customers.
So we help organizations execute strategy through continuous performance management and applied leadership. So a lot of that, what that means is having good quality one-on-one conversations and helping team members really understand what's in the strategy, give it some meaning so they have a meaningful contribution. And we spent a lot in leadership development before we built Inspire.
Hmm.
And I always felt like I wasn't getting the return on investment because they weren't able to really apply it in their day-to-day job. So a
Hmm.
lot of what we wanted to create when building it was getting people to really apply the skills in their day-to-day, like productivity planning and things like situational leadership.
I love that. Now, and I want to get into this, but you are actually talking about when you talk about leadership development, are you talking about because we talked before, you had built an app to try
Yep.
to help your team in leadership development.
Yeah.
Talk about that just for a second, because I know that people are listening right now. They're like, "Hey, we're all about we want to develop our people." I mean that's one of our goals for most organizations. But not only did you want to develop your own people, you went out and created an app to do that. Talk about that just for a second.
Sure. We were doing a lot of like Franklin Covey, Seven Habits training, and then Ken Blanchard with situational leadership, and for about 10 years teaching that and really trying to make the most of those programs. And what I would find is the employees would like the courses, but I'd ask them, "How are you applying this?" And they really didn't have a lot to show for it.
Mm.
And so when Steve Jobs introduced the iPad, Ken Blanchard actually reached out to me as an alumni from his program, like really want you to apply this. And I thought, let's build an app that puts this really into action. And as people are doing goal setting, challenge them on their SMART goals, and then as they're holding one-on-ones, situational leadership is all about determining people's development level.
Mm.
So usually when you're starting a goal, like let's take skiing, for example, excited to learn, you're at this development one stage because you don't know what you don't know. And then you get into this out on the slopes and you're falling down and you call that D2 because you're kind of frustrated and you might want to give up. And that's very common with goals in general. And then if you have a good coach, then you're getting to this D3 stage, which is building up the competence.
Mm.
And then finally, D4 is achieving. So as we put that into our software, it helped people identify where they're really at, and really more so for leaders to understand how best to give them the right type of direction and support. Because if somebody's at the achieving stage and you're giving them clear direction, that's kind of micromanagement.
Mm.
They don't want that. And the opposite's true. When somebody's at that early stage, they really need a lot of skills, and some leaders just delegate and leave people alone, and that's not good either.
Mm.
So yeah, we put that into the software, and as they go through their one-on-one meetings, it really helps them know how best to have a coaching conversation with each of the goals they have.
That is
And
so
that's where it
good.
all started, back in the iPad.
Oh man, that is so good. I love that. I love that. And you mentioned, hey, let's take skiing, for example. You're an avid skier. I would love to hear the Chris Wollerman story. Like, where did you grow up? And
Sure.
how in the world did you get to where you are today?
Well, I grew up in Michigan, kind of near Detroit, so
Hmm.
our ski areas were pretty small compared to where I'm at in Jackson Hole. But I did a lot of jobs. Started very young as a paper boy, and worked in a lot of restaurants. But my favorite job was playing in a band. I played keyboards, and I was really excited to pursue that as a career. But what I found out is my bandmates were really talented, but some of them were on welfare and just didn't seem to be going anywhere. So that was kind of my
Mm.
inspiration for college. Like, I was very excited about music technology, and so I went into Michigan Tech and computer engineering. And this was 1984 when the Mac was just rolling out. So I
Right.
was I was really excited to get my hands on that and learn all the insides of it and stuff. And I still was able to join a band. My future wife's band. I joined, and we played all through college and recorded CDs and stuff over the years. And I got a summer internship at one of the big three in the auto industry. And I witnessed in the mid 80s, it was really bad culture. They were getting killed by Toyota and others.
Mm.
And so it was my experience of not wanting to work in an environment where people didn't like their jobs. And
Mm.
um, my first job out of college was also in Washington, D.C., just a really toxic culture. So my goal was like, try to set up a company and find like-minded people who are passionate about software engineering and the type of customers that we were serving. And we started Innova Systems back in '97.
Mm.
And about 10 years in, really got my master's degree in executive leadership, and Inspire came soon after that. And what I was really after was trying to get best places to work. And we achieved that 10 years in a row with Inspire. Ended up selling the company after 25 years. And now I'm fully focused on helping other organizations build great cultures.
Mm. I love that. I love that. There's so much here. There's so much here, Chris. The first question I have is like, what kind of music did you play? I mean, the keyboards. I've learned. Listen, I learned to play the piano, and I got to like novice level. I just couldn't quite get past that because it takes a lot of practice. What did y'all play? Did y'all play like
So
rock
I
music
started
or?
classical, and like a lot of kids, I was ready to quit after 4 or 5 years. But
Hmm.
my uncle took me to see Elton John in concert in Detroit, and I saw him doing like handstands on the piano, and the crowd going wild. And I thought this could be a fun thing to stick with.
Oh,
And I learned one of his songs like when I was 10 years old, played it for my school,
yeah,
and uh, and it just kept stuck with me. And so yeah, classic rock's always been, it wasn't classic at that time back in the
yeah.
the 80s, but
I
now
love
it is,
that.
and we still love it.
I love all that. I love that. It's interesting because you mentioned Elton John. That's just an example when we talk about leadership development. It's an example of modeling leadership. That's what we need is we need to see
Yeah,
people who get it, who can do it, and inspire us to want to do that, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. He's done a lot of great organizations, helping others, and
Yeah.
it's a good role model for sure.
Yeah, that's so good. I do want to I want to get into this best places to work because I've like circled that and underlined it already twice. But before that, I'm just curious, like Was there a moment? I always like to ask my guests when they found their lane, like when they found their calling, their purpose. You mentioned that you had like this passion to go, pursue being in a band, but then you figured out, hey, look, this is probably, I like doing this, but this is probably not the lane I want to be in. So you pivoted. And then, of course, you started another company in 10 years, or best place to work. During that run, do you like remember a moment when you're like, hey, I found my lane. This is what I want to do. Any
Yeah.
thoughts?
Yeah, I really think like as I was pursuing my master's, again, this was a University of San Diego, partnered up with Ken Blanchard,
Mm,
and working with him directly and his authors. Their goal was to help leaders like myself, kind of up and coming,
yeah.
really learn and apply. And as I started to apply the skills I was learning, I really felt like this is making a difference.
Mm,
And what I was really after again was a better culture. We were successful with double digit growth for all these years, but we really wanted to have great engagement, great retention, and I think just paying attention to the employees' life, life balance with
yeah.
work and everything was could I could see it was making a big difference in creating this successful company.
There's a lot of business leaders in the audience out there. I know they're all taking notes. If you're not, stop right now, whatever you're doing, and start taking some notes. There's going to be some. I've already got a full page of notes here, Chris, but I want to dive into some leadership here. Again, I wrote down best places to work. I've underlined it. I've circled it. First thing I want to know is like why? Why did you want? Like it sounds like you really had a drive and a determination to have a best place to work company. Talk about that for a second. Why was that important to you and what did it do for your organization?
Well, I think it goes back to those jobs I had. I spent 10 years in big business,
Yeah.
and I just saw a lot of really toxic cultures. Managers who were bossing people around, and employees who didn't like what they were doing. And it was interesting work, but it was just the environment. That
Mm,
I thought, I could find a better place, and I don't want to spend 50 years, in this kind of mode. So that was really, I think, the inspiration for starting Inova Systems, and just finding people that, as we interviewed, it was all about, are you a lifelong learner, and do you what are you passionate about, and what are your
mm.
values, and would you buy into the culture that we're trying to form around, really developing great leaders. And that's the way we went with the organization. And of course we learned, sometimes when you're in really rapid growth, there's all kinds of lessons learned with not necessarily getting the people, but that's also something that as you grow and as you evolve, you get better at that,
Mm.
knowing how to pick the people that align. And we ended up, halfway through that company, a great executive team that we were all on the same page. A lot of us had the same master's degree, and we really were able to do some good work when it came to culture.
Hey, well, let me ask you this, because as a leader, when I was leading an organization early in my career, I mean, I have a passion for leadership development. I love the John Maxwell conferences. I love the Dale Carnegie seminars. Because I love the growth. But there are some people in the organization, they don't really have a passion for that. Is there a way to teach people that? Or is that something like you have to kind of work through that? I'm curious your thoughts because there's probably some leaders out there right now going, you know what, we want that. There's some people in our organization that don't have that passion for that. What do you do in that particular case? I'm curious.
Yeah, it's really, I think helping people understand that leadership development is only going to help them in their career,
Yeah.
right? So whether or not they want to be a formal leader or they just want to be a team member, I think a lot of these practices are around people skills, better communication, better coaching, and just showing them that it can have a big impact, and giving them room to not, of course, you want to have company standards, so you have a common language, common
Mm,
culture, but also allowing them to pursue a balance of learning that they want to go after, right? So
yeah.
it's not just here's our curriculum and that's all you get, but I think we were able to find ways. A lot of it was me going out and teaching at all of our different remote offices and talking through not just the material, but how to apply it and listening to their feedback on, what they bought into or not, and just working through that.
Hey, well, there's probably some people that are listening right now. They're like, "Hey, we want to be the best place to work company too, and we want to build our culture into that." Can you talk a little bit about like, did that just happen overnight? Did it happen like was it? Talk a little bit about what did it take to get there? I'm
Yeah,
curious.
well, you got to measure it. I think engagement surveys are a great place to start.
Yeah.
Now with AI, there's all kinds of tools that, especially if you have a big organization with a few hundred plus people, AI can really help you take like an engagement survey result and
Mm.
talk about the trends. And because we used to spend a lot of time reading those, understanding the culture. But then you have to like debrief it out to everybody who answered it. So you show them that you're taking it serious and you're going to act on it. So like one of the years, our recognition, one of the questions around recognition was kind of low. And so we said, we're going to work on this. And we actually built a module into Inspire around recognition, and everybody started using it and loving it. And it was just simple gratitude, peer
Mm.
to peer and manager to employee. And that made a big difference. And really, I think the biggest impact that we had was when we released Inspire internally, the one-on-one conversations. We taught individuals and managers how to hold better one-on-ones, like identify what your development level is and provide the right level of coaching. And even after the first year, when we implemented this, the engagement surveys were coming back with comments around, I really have a much better relationship with my manager now.
Mm.
I can see the meaning and my contribution in the work, um, and we knew we were onto something with that.
That's so good. I
So,
love
so
that.
that's key piece is just
I
really
love
those
that.
relationships between manager and employee, because I think a lot of people quit when
Mm.
the boss is,
Yeah.
not a good boss.
Yeah, I love that. I wrote down recognition, gratitude. I mean, these are, it seems like these are the basics. And
Yeah,
I had a friend of mine, she always says it's easy and it's hard. It's very easy to recognize people, but it's very hard
yeah.
to do that. I man, one of the questions I had that I wanted to ask you today was you mentioned using AI in your engagement survey. I think that's important. It's very interesting. And of course, we do this at our company, and we were celebrating because our engagement scores have gone up in our organization. And I think that's pretty cool. But when I was the president of Dallas HR back in 2012, I remember the top of the like there were these priorities, leadership development and engagement was like right at the top. Here we are in 2026, engagement continues to be at the top. And I'm just curious, like, why do you think that is? Why do you think that we haven't solved that yet? Or is that something you don't ever solve? It's something you just continue to work on. I'm curious what your thoughts are around that.
Yeah, I think it's very solvable, but it's got to be intentional, and it's hard work, and it takes a
Mm.
long time. It's not. I think a lot of leaders, what we see is they're looking for a silver bullet on, how do I find a tool that helps me turn this around overnight. And it's just something that you've got to intentionally build and be a part of, lead by example, and develop yourself as leaders, and really, make sure it's something across the organization, having lots of conversations about where do we still need to improve, and are we seeing signs of things getting better, and how do we build on that? But we saw like we had a culture. We started off with that intention, but
Hmm.
again, as we grew rapidly through some really big contracts and stuff, the culture was, I would say, a little better than mediocre. But we really, as we started to invest time into more leadership development, but also like around those one-on-ones, having a consistent language, recognition, and of course, a lot of other things that you can do with having more social events and charities and things like that. But I think the core of it is just between manager and employee again, having that consistency.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times too, we get excited about, hey, we're gonna here's the, three of our objectives this year, and engagement can be part one of them. And then all of a sudden we go into the year and we got other, competing priorities. And so
Yeah,
that kind of moves to the side. But it sounds like what you've done at your organization is you really built a tool or a system
yeah.
to where it makes it easy for everybody to stay on track throughout the year, correct?
Exactly. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
part of the weekly process of you plan each
Yeah.
week. Real, it's lightweight, but you go into each week with where am I at on my objectives? And
Yeah.
so if one of the company's top objectives is around engagement, several teams should be aligned to that and seeing that every week and planning initiatives to make sure, they're not getting behind. And this again is where at the top of the organization, they really need to stay engaged on how are those metrics tracking and are we making progress? And if not, what do we need to do to take some action on it?
Yeah.
And so just keeping that consistently flowing, I think, is really what makes a difference. And not just a lot of organizations, I think, set that goal at the beginning of the year, saying 2026, we want to improve our engagement scores from X to Y. But then they get lost, and their end of the year, they're wondering why it didn't happen. And
Hmm.
you just got to keep that consistent week after week update on how you're doing on those scores.
And there's also a lot of other things your organization does. I was very fascinated by when we were talking about the engagement using AI. Also, we talked a little bit about strategy planning.
Yeah,
And I think that is another area too, where we have a lot of intentions. Like we sit down and we plan our strategy, sometimes for months.
right.
And but then we can't quite sustain just continuing to work that strategy. Is that something that you also do? And what are your thoughts around like why is that so hard for
Yeah.
organizations to like just stay in that lane for a long period of time?
Yeah, well, that's really the heart of what we do with Inspire is, and with our clients
Okay.
is help them develop really good quality goals. Starts there, and in 2026, I mean, I just probably had the most profound usage of AI and strategy planning in 30 years, right? It does so much research, whether it's competitive analysis or we usually crowdsource the SWOT analysis about strengths and weaknesses, and
Mm.
it just helped. It allows leaders to spend more time doing quality analysis instead of all the normal tasks that you have to do
Hmm.
in research. And so, getting a really good plan to start with is important. High quality. We use OKRs, objectives and key
Mm.
result, which is pretty common approach with all industries now that we're seeing. And
And for
and that
those who
just
don't know
allows you
what
to.
OKR is, what's
Yeah.
OKR?
Yeah. So you have an objective that's like your qualitative, what we're trying to do and why, what's the business value.
Yeah.
So instead of just saying we're going to meet our revenue goals, really helping the organization understand we're growing in order to be able to evolve to the next level or,
Mm.
whatever your business value or business purpose is. And then the key results are the metrics. So the specific things that you're going to do from X to Y and making sure that you have clear alignment through the organization on who's supposed to contribute towards that.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of what we do is helping get that set up and operational, and you have your team OKRs aligned to the corporate OKRs, and then you have team cadences of people being accountable to the contributions that they're supposed to be making, and then it comes back down to the one-on-one where the manager and the
Mm.
individual are talking through how are you doing on your OKRs, and so that's really a part of the whole platform is just bringing that together.
It's so good and it's very fascinating and I can't wait to like dive in and learn more. But a couple of things that I think about as a leader, I'm thinking the first thing I'm going to ask is there like have you been able to see like an ROI? You mentioned ROI earlier in the show. And so have you been able to see that? What companies that are participating in this type of process? Are they achieving an ROI? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think, well, just starting with your leadership development investment, that's a hard thing to measure. And so if you can say, I want to have a measurable engagement increase,
Yeah.
and you can kind of take pulse surveys along the way to really see,
Mm.
is this working or not? And it allows you to course correct along the way. But I think that's a good way to measure, like we're actually, we're investing this and we're seeing engagement go up. And then, of course, when it comes to the numbers, the revenue, that should also see correlation and be able to know, if you've look at your past strategies at previous years, what have you achieved or where have you fallen short? And then putting a system like this in place, really being able to see the difference on now we're executing every time or over executing. You can really start to compare, where you were versus where you're at now in this
Yeah.
kind of approach.
As I think about this too, this is the other question I think that many people would be thinking about, and I'd be interested if you're listening right now and you have questions. I'm gonna give you the links to connect with Chris later. But we're in a busy time. Like everybody's busy, 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 busy. I mean, I'm planning my week. I'm like, I don't see many openings here. I talk about that because it seems to me like when I think about leadership development, when I think about strategy planning, when I think about systems and tools and putting all this in place, it seems to me like it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
But is it? Because a lot of times when you build things out and you build things out in a system, for example, I have my payroll deduct a portion of my pay into my, money market or savings account, and I don't even have to worry about that. So that's a system that, used to I would be, spending time moving all that around. Does that take as much time as what people think, or is that important to invest in that? Talk a little bit about that. I'm curious.
Yeah. So we kind of live by the concept of crawl, walk, run, right? So you
Mm,
crawl and you can make this start off really easy and simple. And that's what your employees want. They want a simple platform that they're not going to have to learn a bunch of new software that you introduce. And companies are bringing in applications left and
mhm.
right. So it's a challenging time. So start simple, and all you really need to do is be intentional about, we're going to set up some good goals. It doesn't have to be the whole
Mm,
organization's worth of goals, right? It's just like we've got a top 3 to 5 corporate objectives, and then the teams all have like one main goal that they're working on, and then an intentional process around having them plan regularly, which could take 5 or 10 minutes a week, right? And then having them meet at their team level and their one-on-ones. So hopefully, if you've already got like a meeting cadence, it's really just about improving the quality of the meetings. But it fits right in with a lot of the work you're already doing. It's just a few minor changes to get people aligned. And then when you get to the walk and the run stages, you can take it as far and as fast as you want, but
mm.
you really don't need to go there to get good return on that investment. And with AI out, it is an exciting time, a lot of changes, but it also, if you put that into your strategy, like we're going to really embrace, learn this and master this and start applying it throughout the organization, you'll see the gains and a lot of the time savings that you're spending on other things right now. You can save that time for better
Mm.
quality executing the right goals.
And I think at the end of the day, you have to just look at it as, hey, if this is something we want, you have to decide right first is you have to have a desire to want to be a best place to work company or want to grow your organization. And once you make that decision, then you're really making that investment. And we're talking about not just your other money or resources, but your time
Yeah.
investing in. And I like it what you said. You mentioned one-on-one coaching several different times, and I love that. And I think that's what it takes, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah, and it's I think a lot of companies have one-on-ones, but you've got to be deliberate about having a clear agenda.
Yeah.
It's usually it should be around their goals, and it should be the leader helping the employee get through those, helping them succeed, basically,
Yeah.
helping them develop in their career. And so as soon as you make that subtle shift, instead of just being a status meeting, it's more of a development meeting, and the employee starts to see, okay, this is worth my time, and and I'm starting to enjoy being here because I'm making progress, I'm learning and growing. And I think that's what it really comes down to for great cultures is they feel like it's the company's looking out for them.
What I love about this too, Chris, is that you are a continuous learner. I mean, we start off the show saying, "Hey, I read a book a week minimum," and so you walk the talk. You're like, that the more you grow, the more your organization will grow around you and everything you're doing. I wanted to ask you a question. Has anybody ever given you advice? You just found it was just so good. You just find yourself sharing that with others. Any thoughts?
Lots. I've had a
Hmm.
lot of mentors and some great partners in this business, and really just slowing down and taking the time to listen and work with your people.
Mm.
I think is probably one of the best of, not making it about the numbers, but making it about the people. And I think Ken, I've heard him give keynotes so many times, and he's like, if you focus on the people first, the customers will notice,
Mm.
and as they notice, the revenue will come. You always get the start with your people, and customers will recognize that it's a great culture because they're well trained and they care about the customers.
It's hard to slow down. Like I remember I got back last week and like it was just such a busy week. I was traveling. I got back and so over the weekend I rested. I recharged. But then man, Monday morning got here, man, and I'm like running, I'm going to work out, I'm doing all these things, and I'm just boom, boom, boom. But you really do have to slow down, don't you?
Yeah, you got to know what to say no to. It's a lot like strategy planning.
Ooh.
There's when you crowdsource the SWOT, for example, you get a ton of great ideas, but you've got to narrow it down to what can we reasonably execute this year or this quarter, and then when it comes down to the weekly level, it's the same thing. What's my weekly plan, and what do
Yeah.
I have to really focus on, and cut out the other stuff,
Yeah.
the noise.
Yeah. This is so good, man. I'm so glad Darren introduced us together. Hey, by the way, did Darren ever tell you he bowled a 300 game? A
No,
perfect
nope, I
bowling
didn't
game?
hear that. That's
Huh?
great.
Well,
That's
you heard
great.
it right here. It's recorded. Yeah, he joined the 300 club, and so no, he's phenomenal. I'm so glad he introduced us, and I'm looking forward to following Inspire and learning more and about your organization and just watching you inspire companies, to want to be better. And it's just so good. Hey, I want to shift over to a time to accelerate as we kind of conclude the show here. You mentioned you read about a book a week. Couple things. One, I do want to hear, do you have like a favorite or a couple of favorite books? And number two, did you like start, you mentioned earlier, you said, hey, you got to crawl, you got to walk, you got to run. Is that the way you did with reading too? Because I remember at one time I had a goal of reading like
Yeah.
two or three books a year, and today I read a bunch. Talk about that.
So I wasn't a good reader like growing up and even in college.
Yeah.
I read Stephen King, things like that from time to time. But um, as I was pursuing my first job out of college, I had like 4 months where I was really doing interviews and things. That was '89 when Stephen Covey's Seven Habits came out.
Hmm.
So I just stumbled upon that and read it, and it really resonated with me to, kind of live that in my career. And I went back to it year after year. And so as I read a lot today, I still go back to some of those classics. And
Hmm.
I think his Eighth Habit was a really good book in 2005 after about 20 years of him applying it to organizations and all the lessons learned.
Hmm.
And I think part of my master's program too, I got pretty regularly reading because you every month you'd go into this program with a cohort of other leaders, and they'd give you two or three books that month that you had to read before the class and then come up and
Oh, man.
and so I just kind of got in that habit, I guess, and
Yeah.
always enjoyed it and thrived with it.
Yeah, I love that. I'm an avid reader as well. I listen a lot on Audible, and what I like about it is, yes, I learn a lot, but where I really learn is whenever I start sharing what I learned,
Yeah.
because then it starts turning into bigger conversations, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think that's one thing Covey taught us too. It's like teach to learn. And something that was really important
Yeah.
in our organization is you can't just
Mm.
hire some consultant to teach it. You got to live it, teach it,
Yeah. Live
and
it.
apply. And I heard a good quote of somebody saying something along the lines of, if all you do is listen to these books or podcasts or watch the YouTube and you don't apply it, it's really just entertainment, and you
Yeah.
might as well,
Oh, yeah.
you need to take some notes and say, I'm
Yeah.
going to do something and do it, and try to make it work.
I do a presentation on my drive with purpose. And at the end of the keynote, I always say, hey, we need to have an ACT because ACT stands for Action Changes Things. And so if you don't take one thing and go apply it, it's all for nothing. You'll forget it. Hey, before we move on, I want to ask you real quick. You mentioned that you read My Life in Leadership Lane. You read Drive with Purpose. Yeah, I always like to ask, like, Drive with Purpose, like, what was your takeaway from that? Did that like resonate with you? Talk about that for a second.
Yeah, yeah. It kind of gets me to reflect on, looking back at my mission. One of the things we have with Inspire is a values module.
Hmm.
And so as I was
Hmm.
reading the book and after I read that book, I went back and refreshed on kind of updating
Yeah.
my personal mission and making it real and bringing it, making it current, really.
Yeah.
So I think that's an important piece. Is just
Yeah.
it builds on a lot of, like, I know your background with Maxwell
Yeah.
and others that I've also, really looked up to. But I think it's depending on where you're at in your life at the time, these concepts come and, really can resonate and make sure that you're updating and staying current.
Yeah, it's so true. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. Depending on the season of life you're in and the book, it will hit you differently, and it's so good. Okay, I've got a couple more questions I'm going to ask you before we wrap up here. You are a continuous learner. You learn learn the keys. I love that. I admire that because I know how hard that is to play the piano. What's something you still want to learn, Chris?
So I'm deep in a certification for Claude Cowork right now,
Oh,
and which is Anthropic's AI, and it's pretty incredible. And I'm just so excited to continue to learn and apply that, and every day, seeing new things out of it. So
hmm.
that's probably my main focus, and being able to balance that and bring it into what we're doing in our tooling, because
Hmm.
there's so much ways we can apply it. So that's fun path I'm on today, and it's constantly evolving. So at one of our, like, we do this strategy map that we roll out in April to all our employees to kind of give a visual of what our main
Hmm.
objectives are, and at the center of it is the Orion rocket spaceship
Hmm.
that just touched down.
Yeah.
That feels like we're on a rocket ship, going 25,000 miles an hour with AI coming out with new things every week.
Mm,
Exciting, but again, you gotta slow down and say, okay, this is the one thing I'm going to focus on
yeah.
for this week or this month, and
Yeah.
go deep with it, and it can pay off.
I love that. I was reading a quote this morning. I forgot the basketball coach that said it. But anyway, he was talking about, the important thing is you just got to commit to every day. That's how you succeed. Commit to the day.
Yep.
And basically what he is saying is, hey, quit going so fast. Just slow down, focus on what's important today. And I just love that because once you have the strategy, once you have the plan, like we talked about earlier, you know what's ahead. So you can just focus on each day, working the plan. I just love that. You mentioned earlier, I wrote this down. You mentioned when we were talking about some of the things that were important, recognition and one-on-one coaching, but you also said a word that uh, you said the word gratitude. And
Absolutely.
in my book, Life in Leadership Lane, I have a chapter, Great Leaders Are Grateful Leaders. What are you most grateful for, Chris?
Well, really just the opportunity to be in this career and
Mm.
helping others and helping kids like Darren. I still think 25 is not a kid, but it feels like my son's 25 as well, and grew up with
Yeah,
Darren.
yeah,
I also had another neighbor of similar age, and the opportunity to help them with a lot of the lessons, and hopefully they'll listen to some of it, right,
mm,
and apply it, because I've had such a great, enjoyable career. After I
yeah,
got through those first rough 10 years, it's been, really fun to wake up every day and do what I do. And so
yeah.
that's what I'm most grateful for. It's and doing it with my wife, who's my business partner. And, we share both businesses from the previous 25 years, where she was CFO and CHRO,
Mm,
and a lot of collaboration that's lasted for quite a while, 40 years now we've been
That's
together.
awesome. Oh, that's awesome. It's awesome to be able to do that together. And as you were sharing that, I thought about the subtitle of Drive with Purpose is moving your career from success to significance. And that's really what you are just driving in that lane of significance. And that significance is about helping people. And it just feels good. Like it just gives you this good feeling like, hey, I've put in all this work. Now I'm going to go help some other people along the way. And it's so meaningful. So I appreciate you sharing that. Okay, here's my last question. And I've asked a lot of leaders this question, over 250. Chris, 10 years older. He's around the corner right now and he's knocking at your door. You are going to get up and go answer that door. What's he going to tell you?
Still healthy, right?
Mm,
And I think made a big impact on these employees that I'm working with today. The Darrens of the company who are just starting out in their careers
yeah.
are seeing like they're really happy and successful, and the clients that we've had, and hopefully a lot of clients that have transformed their cultures into a great place to work, and we've shown them some of the keys to that success. It's interesting, like you talked about the number of companies or the percentage of companies that have high engagement is still so low,
Mm.
and yet we've seen how we can make this happen. So hopefully we can share that with more and maybe see those numbers go up 10 years from now.
I love that. This has been so good. I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing their wisdom. There's people that are listening right now. They're like, you know what? I do want to reach out. I do have some questions about some of the things that Chris shared today. Is there a way, what's the best way for one of our listeners to reach out to you and connect?
Sure. Chris at inspiresoftware.com,
Okay.
or you can just go to inspiresoftware.com and click on, give me a demo, and it usually ends up with me, or just ask for me, and I'll be happy to sit with you and show you, what we have to help, and or just talk through any challenges. I'm always happy to provide some insight.
Yeah, wonderful. I'll put that in the show notes. And when you reach out to Chris, just say, "Hey, I heard you on Life and Leadership Lane, and here's something that you shared that was that I want to know more about, or maybe just encourage him to just keep sharing what he's sharing." And this has been so good. I'm so glad that we're able to get this recorded today, and I can't wait to share this. And I look forward to just watching you and your organization inspire others down the road. So, Chris, thank you for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun talking.
Awesome. Okay, I'll talk to you later.